Hi, today's good person to know is John Barnes. He's Managing Director of Incisive Media, responsible for digital strategy, and his talk is on how to build and develop sustainable revenue for digital media. It's about capturing the times when your audience are tuned in so that you can communicate more effectively with them, because that's when they're most likely to be receptive to the information that you're sharing with them. Now, in this video, John explains what the best time is to do this and on what device. He says the internet has moved back into the growth phase and it's very profitable because for Incisive, they have a niche market, data and multiple devices. And that's because they've researched what different devices are used throughout the day. John says there are two types of multi-screen use. One, doing one task at a time using different devices. That tends to be more for the older generation. And simultaneous use, people using different devices at the same time. For example, when they're watching football, they might be going onto their tablet to do Facebooking, and they might tweet using their smartphone throughout the match. So they really do complement each other. John says that you have to be responsive because everything starts on a smartphone and concludes elsewhere, and to understand who your customers are, what devices they use, when and where in the day. This is what Incisive do, and it's the heart of their revenue strategy. I personally found this talk to be very insightful. I didn't know that there was a special time to communicate with people because I thought we were all switched on all the time. Clearly, that's not the case. So I hope you enjoyed this video and thank you for watching.
There are lots of companies that are trying to do what they did in the past, in the present and the future, and they're making some really sort of like glaringly obvious mistakes. So for example, in my business, advertising is a key revenue driver. Advertising isn't going to work in the 21st century if we try and just have the biggest audience than anybody else that we're competing with, because that's going to be very much about a price purchase. It's going to be about competing with the big media organisations, so in our world maybe FT, and we're never going to win if we try and sort of have the biggest circulation as we might have tried to do in the past. Sometimes what we've done in the past doesn't work going forward, and some of the things we try and think of in the present to help in the future also don't work. We are very much in phase 3 now, which is extend and defend. I think the internet business, the digital business, as we would call it in Incisive, has sort of on this hype curve moved back into a growth phase. And the reason for that is that we're focusing, as are most other digital publishers, not on big audiences, on legacy kind of solutions to dealing with digital, but actually thinking about what we've got. We've got niche, valuable audiences, we've got data, we've got multiple devices. And how do we put those together to create a publishing proposition that's highly, highly profitable and therefore very, very viable? Historically, there's been this sort of tension between content and advertising. Advertising and content have been competing for attention between each other. And I don't really think that's the case anymore. It's not really about a competition between content and advertising. It's much more now about a competition between activity and screens. What activity you're doing on what screens, and therefore how does that affect the media company in terms of what you're doing, what we need to understand what you're doing, and therefore how we can monetize it. And we've looked very specifically at different times of the day. Down at the bottom there, you've got the different keys there, tablets, you've got mobile, desktop, etc. And then what you can see through the research we've done with our audience is what the different devices are, the combinations they're using at different times of the day. And you might wonder why at leaving work I've actually included commuter newspapers, but increasingly they're being read on tablets, and we're finding that we're retargeting people on tablets through things like Metro by actually knowing that they're a Risk.net subscriber, buying through programmatic trading, advertising on that tablet, and then hooking them back in their leisure time back into Risk.net to bring the value back to us. So don't sort of think it's just about your own universe. Think about the other tablets and other devices that might be involved with it. There's sort of two types of multi-screen use. There's the older person who will do it sequentially. I'm about to do my email on my phone. I've done that, now I'm going to do Facebook on my tablet, and now I'm going to do the shopping at Ocado on my notebook computer. I don't know why it's older people, but generally it tends to be older people who go sequentially. We're much more interested in simultaneous use as a publisher because obviously we want to increase overall usage, and if we've got people using devices simultaneously for different things, that's really important. And the most important thing for us is really complementary usage, and the difference between multitasking use and complementary use is really very simple. Multitasking use is doing lots of things at the same time. So you might be watching a match, you might be looking at your friend's Facebook profile on a tablet, you might be tweeting about the match now and again, but you might also be looking at other match-related scores on your phone. They're different tasks. They're sort of related because it's in and around the leisure time of the football match. But in principle, complementary usage is really going from one device to another device, back to a device, and back onto a device to complete a task. It's also really important to accept the fact that however much you don't want to do responsive design or HTML5 or do that upgrade that you've been meaning to do for the last 6 months, everything is starting on a smartphone. Pretty much every media interaction is starting on a smartphone, whether it completes somewhere else. And I've given some statistics there about primarily what people do. Devices have got different attributes. The way that you use devices are different. So, a really simple grid. This has helped us working with publishers, and we basically said, look, wake up, desktop computer has got a mail client on it, it's got the ability to have apps, it's got a browser, and it's got the ability to also have additions, whether they're page flip kind of products, there's a lot of people who have those now, or whether they're sort of more beautifully designed for things like Chrome or other products. But so does a phone. A phone has the ability to have a mail client, it has a browser, has all the same things a desktop does. It's just a different device that has different attributes, and guess what, so does a tablet. So what we're doing a lot of with our members at AOP, but also at a company Incisive, is saying the bottom half of that chart on the right is saying, okay, well, what's the strategy then in terms of the product set that you're going to put in and around this brand? And here there's a brand here called Computing, it's about 40 years old. Traditionally it was a print magazine. It now is pretty much exclusively digital. There's still very few print copies, but it's really not where we make our money. So understanding who users are, what devices they use, when and where in the day, and why, is basically the heart of everything we're doing in terms of revenue. The data of who, what, when, and why is what will be used to create custom audiences, and that's where the value is. Publishers have audiences, agencies don't.